Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Kulture:How family of companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOW or visit billhow.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, September 20th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We've heard so much about California's cars going all electric, but that is just part of the story. Tonight, a first-of-its-kind partnership is in place on San Diego's waterfront. KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us about the low-carbon future for the port and the Navy.
It's a part of San Diego that, unless you work there, you probably don't think about. But San Diego's working waterfront is a critical part of the local economy, and a major player is the United States Navy. Chairman of the Board of Port Commissioners Dan Malcolm summarized the importance of today's agreement.
We are here today to celebrate an innovative federal, state, and local initiative that will provide millions of dollars for electrification projects for both Naval Base San Diego and the Port of San Diego.
The Navy will now participate in a cap-and-trade type of program where it will generate credits by changing how it powers its fleet while in port. It will switch to using much more shore power rather than power generated by carbon-intense methods on board its ships. One credit is equal to 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide that won't go into the atmosphere. The Port of San Diego then monetizes those credits through a broker.
The funding we generate will enable us to buy new electric equipment as well as invest in our respective infrastructure backbones to enable our electrification efforts to move forward to the next level.
The port has already been moving in that direction. On display today, an electric truck and this $1.5 million electric-powered loader. After remarks from other dignitaries, Navy brass, and the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Energy, Installations, and Environment, it was time to sign the agreement. I'm just about a stone's throw away from where today's agreement was signed, and it is in neighborhoods like Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, Sherman Heights, and National City, where the environmental rubber meets the road. A significant step forward in bringing about environmental equity.
Welcome to my home neighborhood where I grew up.
The new agreement is personal to Assemblymember David Alvarez.
Today I'm here joyfully, Madam Secretary, because the federal government now wants to participate in this as well. And that to me is really significant.
A significant day, especially for people who live right next door to the working waterfront, who can now look forward to living in a cleaner environment. John Carroll, KPBS News.
For most of us still driving gas-powered cars, prices are starting to rise again. The average price for a gallon of regular is now $5.41, according to AAA. That's 11 cents higher than a month ago when prices were coming back down from record highs. San Diego is paying almost $2 more than the national average of $3.67. Now that the city of San Diego has completed the purchase of 101 Ash Street and the Civic Center buildings, what's next? As KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen explains, that's where everyday San Diegans come in.
Nearly 24 community and civic leaders were recruited for Mayor Todd Gloria's Civic Center Revitalization Committee. They include former city council members and an economics professor. The committee's singular focus is to gather the community's input on how to best redevelop the 6 blocks of city-owned land around the Civic Center Plaza. It is a precursor to the formal bidding process set to start next year.
We are looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a huge difference for our city's downtown. I think many of you have been long involved in public affairs, and you recognize that we have waited far too long for this day.
The last time the city attempted to redevelop the Civic Core was 15 years ago. The city has yet to announce which sites it will include in the Surplus Land Act, which stipulates how cities can offload excess land, with a priority on building affordable housing. San Diego Chief Operating Officer Jay Goldstone explains the requirements.
The act requires that at least, and I say at the minimum, 25% of the proposed housing must be at affordable 80% AMI or better.
AMI stands for Area Median Income. Currently, that's just under $107,000. Possible redevelopment sites include the entire City Hall Plaza complex, including the Civic Theater. Also on the table are the problematic 101 Ash Street building, as well as the City Operations Building, Police Headquarters, and Housing Navigation Center. The city does not want to repeat the mistake it made in the Midway District redevelopment, where the city was criticized for focusing too much on affordable housing and not having enough public input.
I want to take a few minutes to set the stage and manage expectations.
While the city has a blank slate, Goldstone says their recommendations must include a new city hall and follow the State Surplus Land Act.
The public agency may add some development conditions, but those are limited.
The committee will meet every 2 weeks until the end of the year. It is expected that developers will include the committee's recommendations in their proposals when the properties are up for bid. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
The Navy laid out its case today for why the 2020 fire on board the USS Bonhomme Richard was arson. This is the second day of the trial of Ryan Sawyer Mace. Special Agent Matt Beals went over a 250-page report that determined the fire was set deliberately in July of 2020. The defense has questioned whether lithium-ion batteries found at the scene could have started the fire. Beals said he went back and tested the batteries and again ruled them out. Mace has denied setting the fire, but Beals said he could not fully account for Mace's time leading up to the fire. A recent KPBS investigation revealed an El Cajon nursing home is still operating despite hundreds of complaints and instances of abuse. So how do families know which facility is right for their loved ones? KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman talked to a lawyer for a nursing home watchdog group for tips.
A KPBS investigation found nearly 630 complaints at Avocado Post-Acute in El Cajon over the last few years. State investigations found a resident was sexually assaulted by her caregiver back in 2019, and just a year ago, a man was allegedly strangled to death by his roommate.
Avocado has been egregiously violating these standards for a long period of time, and yet nothing seems to change.
Tony Chicatel is a senior staff attorney with California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. He suggests that people closely analyze their options and make sure to visit facilities before ultimately choosing a nursing home.
Taking a look around, are people's needs being met? Are the staff engaged with providing care to the residents? Does it look like the residents have all the care they need? Or does it sound and look and smell like a horror show? I think a lot of residents go to nursing homes. I think probably the vast majority, we're talking 90% or more, go to facilities sight unseen. They've never seen the building. They've never been inside. They haven't had any representatives go and check it out. They just trust. And on this issue, I think it's really important and critical. I advise people not to trust.
Chicatel says people and their families have to be their own advocates. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The moving of migrants by conservative governors to so-called sanctuary locations is no longer just a political move. It's now a criminal investigation, at least in one border state. Mike Valerio updates us on the situation and the people caught in the middle.
The outrage from Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar was clear as he announced his investigation into the Martha's Vineyard migrants' flight.
I believe that they were preyed upon. Somebody came from out of state, preyed upon these people, lured them with promises of a better life, which is what they were absolutely looking for.
A Venezuelan man at a migrant resource center in San Antonio said he was approached to help fill a flight out of Texas, offered a deal for free food and a free hotel, a deal he thought that was too good to be true. Stop doing it, the man said. If you're going to help people, do it out of your heart. Don't utilize us immigrants. We don't want to be used as toys in your political games. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis defended his actions.
They were hungry, homeless. They had no opportunity at all. The state of Florida, it was volunteer, offered transport to sanctuary jurisdictions.
It all comes as the U.S. has intercepted more than 2 million migrants along the southern border, driven by influxes of people from Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. Texas says it's bused more than 11,000 migrants to Washington, D.C., Chicago, and New York.
We opened up 23 emergency shelters. We're not going to leave any stone unturned.
At least 9 buses reached New York City this weekend, carrying more than 1,000 asylum seekers. The city is now considering temporary housing for migrants aboard cruise ships, as migrants are found permanent housing and jobs. Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
And just this week, KPBS reported on a group of migrants filing a formal complaint over what they call torturous conditions at an ICE facility in Imperial Valley. They claim that they are victims of medical negligence and civil rights violations. You can read the complaint at kpbs.org and stream our report at the KPBS YouTube page. Hurricane Fiona is moving through the Caribbean after causing serious damage in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. As Chris Nguyen reports, FEMA is now on the island trying to coordinate relief.
Hurricane Fiona leaving a path of destruction and threatening even more deadly flooding as it grows to a Category 3 storm.
It has been catastrophic rain that just won't stop.
The storm slamming Turks and Caicos on Tuesday after already cutting power for over 1 million customers in Puerto Rico. Damage on this scale not seen in the U.S. territory since Hurricane Maria made landfall 5 years ago. Some who lived through that say Fiona's flooding destruction could be even more severe.
It's been rough. We've been just working to get back this neighborhood, get it back from Maria, that everything was destroyed. Restaurants, houses, everything was destroyed.
Officials in Puerto Rico hope to restore power in a matter of days to the majority of residents, but rescue efforts continue to be impacted across the island. Schools are also being inspected to ensure they're in working condition for students to return to class in the days ahead. The National Hurricane Center says parts of the territory could see more than 30 inches of rain by the end of the storm.
The first responders, the local responders, the responders of the government of Puerto Rico are not able to get out and help those that need it or assess the damage.
The hurricane also leaving more than 1 million people without running water in the Dominican Republic. Government officials there say first responders brought nearly 800 people to safety. Chris Nguyen, KPBS News.
Now we're going to be talking about some changes to our weather as we go down the road later on this week. We'll notice the cooling will begin to fade. Less morning, low clouds, especially toward the coast and some of the interior valleys, and a warming trend taking shape as we go into Thursday and Friday. Big weather maker into northern California, including much of the Sierra, has been this low pressure. We've been talking about the onshore flow. Of course, not as much moisture here points to the south, but definitely quite a bit of wet weather again in the north, say around Redding and northbound toward Medford. We go into Wednesday. Again, it's going to be dry, not quite as warm again as recent days, but that's going to start to change as we go further down the road. Still some showers off to the north into northern California, and also some increasing moisture over the Four Corners into Arizona and Utah, where there will be some downpours, even some flood watches up. Let's talk about tonight. First, partly cloudy, dropping down into the upper 60s. Again, area-wide, we're going to be looking at lots of 60s around Oceanside and Chula Vista, Borrego Springs, Ramona, dropping back into the 50s. Here's Futurecast, and again, less in the way of low cloudiness as we go throughout the next couple of days as that onshore flow really starts to decrease and break down. Temperatures climbing into the upper 70s towards San Diego and Oceanside, Borrego Springs 96, Ramona at 82. And Thursday, again, we're going to be looking at dry air in place. Again, moisture stays east, and we'll start to see our temperatures climbing, especially late this weekend or this weekend. Look at the coast. By the time we go into Saturday, highs now up into the mid-80s over the interior. Look at this inland, closer to 90 degrees Friday right into Sunday. In the mountains, also climbing up through the 70s, dry throughout, and into the deserts, triple digits arriving by Friday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Potic.
Ensenada is the birthplace of Mexican surfing. It's a rich history that many people don't know about. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis talked with 2 local surfers trying to preserve and spread that history.
The Baja coast has always had amazing waves. But when Ignacio Felix was growing up in Ensenada during the 1960s, surfboards were a rare commodity.
No es como hoy ustedes en día aventarlos por todos lados. Nosotros de vez en cuando veíamos un americano llegar a Ensenada con una tabla en el techo.
Felix was among a group of curious children who spent hours at the beach just sitting there on the sand watching the surfers catch waves. As he grew older, Felix's curiosity turned into a passion, and he became one of the original co-founders of the Baja Surf Club, which was the first official club in Mexican history. He remembers being totally starstruck when surfing legends he'd only seen on magazine pages came to Ensenada for a contest that he helped organize.
Comienzan a llegar figuras como Mike Doyle, Mickey Muñoz, David Nueva, hasta Mickey Dora llegó.
By the time Pete Torres first picked up a board in the 1970s, surfing was becoming more popular in Mexico, but it still had a stigma. He says that it was mostly associated with long hair, hippies, and drugs.
Si tú le decías a tu mamá, voy a empezar a surfear, tu mamá, no, es un deporte de vagos, son marihuanos, o sea, era muy mal visto.
Mexico has thousands of miles of coastline and several world-class surf spots. Thanks to these natural gifts, it also has a rich surf history, full of adventurers who discovered new waves and evangelized the sport down the country's Pacific coast. They also fought a federal government that didn't want them around. But that rich history is not well known. Torres and Jesus Salazar are trying to change that. They started documenting the origins of Mexican surfing through a podcast and Instagram page called Memorabilia del Surfing Mexicano.
And that's like the main objective, you know, like to talk about surfing culture, Mexican surfing culture, and to start to give it an identity to Mexican surf, because there is none.
The project has taken them to famous beaches of Mazatlan, Guerrero, Oaxaca, and Nayarit. They've tracked down historic photographs and interviewed the pioneers of Mexican surfing.
It's amazing to see, to hold the history in your hands, you know.
Torres and Salazar say that one of the most important moments in Mexican surf history happened in 1970. Felix and other members of the Baja Surf Club performed well at the 1968 World Championships in Puerto Rico. They put on a bid to host a tournament in 1970. Against all odds, they were awarded the bid ahead of surfing heavyweights like Australia and South Africa. Felix says nobody expected them to actually get the World Championship. The governor of Baja California and the mayor of Ensenada just couldn't believe it.
La cara de ellos fue que, caray, como que nos apoyaron creyendo que éramos, pues, unos chamacos que estaban medio locos, que no íbamos a traer nada, y de pronto aquí está el mundial. Órale.
The event was going to put Mexican surfing on the map, but the cultural upheaval of the late 1960s was in full swing. Woodstock had just made international headlines. The Mexican government wasn't interested in a south-of-the-border version of that chaotic scene, so they canceled the contest.
Pero el gobierno mexicano dijo, no queremos que Ensenada se convierta en un lugar en donde los hippies de California vengan y lo adopten.
But that decision derailed the development of competitive surfing in Mexico. Mexican surfers would not go to another world championship until 1988, the year Torres was on the team. Salazar says that it's very important for those who lived the history to tell their own stories.
Americans have come a lot and they make all kinds of stories about surfing in Mexico, and they tell very little about Mexicans. And we feel it's important to get the stories about Mexicans out there.
And their efforts are starting to pay off. Salazar and Torres helped research an article on Acapulco surf culture for the latest edition of the Surfer's Journal. They see that collaboration with one of the biggest surfing magazines in the world as recognition of the important work that they're doing. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, much of Puerto Rico is left without power or running water, days after being hit by another disastrous hurricane. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The digital divide is just a little less divided tonight for families who need computer and internet access. The San Diego County Library System is providing the connection. KPBS education reporter MG Perez tells us it's as convenient as checking out a book.
The north of the line is, of course, the Sahara Desert.
11-year-old Jaden and his mother, Selena Williams, are learning on the road.
Although they have a home in Escondido, they travel in this retrofitted transport van with their support pets, Ari the German Shepherd and Sierra the parakeet.
With Jaden, instead of taking 6 hours and sitting down and saying, do school, we live school.
As they travel across the country, Selena homeschools her son, who has special needs, and she has special needs of her own. Together, they live and learn with the help of some free technology.
We have our Asus Chromebook laptop here with a charging plug, and then we have our mobile hotspot.
The San Diego County Library is now offering take-home computer and internet access to anyone with a county library card. 7,000 Chromebooks and Wi-Fi connections were paid for by an emergency $4.3 million grant from the Federal Communications Commission, providing relief in the digital divide to those falling behind and through the cracks.
Yes, everybody needs an internet connection to be successful in life.
The Chromebooks are available here at the Lincoln Acres County Library in National City, among the traditional literature and other learning resources.
The internet allows you to find trustworthy health information. We've seen that become a very large issue here in San Diego County. It helps people connect to educational opportunities, job opportunities.
What's available here at Lincoln Acres is available at all 33 county libraries. But unlike a book or video, the laptops can be checked out for up to a year. That works well for Jaden, his mom, and their travel plans, which include online lessons and lots of reading. What do you enjoy reading most?
Comics. I think it's more that the books I read psychologically connect with me.
With Chromebook in hand, this family is back on the road, preparing for lessons in physical science with a trip to the Grand Canyon. MG Perez, KPBS News.
We're now 7 weeks, that's less than 50 days from the November 8th general election, and you may have seen the push today to get people registered. That's because today is National Voter Registration Day. Here in California, we still have some time. The deadline to register is October 24th. Keep checking on our coverage in the weeks ahead as KPBS brings you in-depth coverage of the campaigns and races important to our area. Abortion will be on the ballot with Proposition 1 effectively guaranteeing abortion access in the state constitution. The reversal of the Roe versus Wade decision immediately made abortion a national issue this cycle. Eva McKend shows us how it's playing out in one high-profile race for governor.
In an election year, even your local farmer's market could become the site of a surprise campaign stop.
Stacey, we're big fans. Can we get a selfie real quick?
Here in Georgia, the future of abortion rights has become central to Democratic nominee for governor Stacey Abrams' strategy to win in November. How much of an emphasis do you plan on putting on abortion rights in the closing weeks of your campaign?
It is going to be front and center in the conversation. Women deserve full citizenship in the United States and certainly in the state of Georgia, and they are being denied that because of Brian Kemp's draconian 6-week ban.
In 2019, Georgia's incumbent Republican Governor Brian Kemp signed a bill into law that bans most abortions when early cardiac activity is detected, usually at around 6 weeks of pregnancy. The law was blocked until Roe was overturned. Emphasizing abortion rights has proved to be successful recently for Democratic House candidates in Republican-leaning Alaska, and a battleground New York district signaling the issue has likely energized Democratic voters in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision.
I definitely think this is something that people should consider while they're voting.
I think it could be the difference in our state.
A recent Quinnipiac poll about the midterms in Georgia showed 57% of likely voters say it's very important a candidate shares their views on abortion. Within that group, 63% back Abrams and 36% support Kemp.
We can get this done. We can do this work.
The daughter of Methodist pastors, Abrams was not always a fierce advocate for abortion rights. On the trail, she talks about her personal evolution on abortion, amplifying the issue last month at a roundtable for women who have suffered pregnancy loss.
What gives me the greatest hope is that you all are speaking up.
Meanwhile, Governor Kemp is principally focused on economic issues, such as inflation, which likely Georgia voters rank as the most urgent issue facing the state, according to the same poll.
Everything has gone up. We
Kemp's campaign says the governor has consistently affirmed his position on abortion and will continue to focus on bringing hardworking Georgians relief from 40-year high inflation. That message resonating with Kemp's supporters.
People want to make it just about one issue, but I think people need to be concerned about paying for their groceries and for gasoline, too.
We also protected the sanctity of God's greatest gift, life.
Speaking before a conservative anti-abortion policy group this month, Kemp spent little time talking about abortion.
You know, we passed the heartbeat bill here, but we've also done adoption reform. We have done foster care reform.
Historically, Kemp has supported a full ban, with the only exception being for the life of the pregnant person, but praised the Supreme Court returning the issue to the states. While Abrams doesn't support any government restrictions on abortion, arguing it's a medical issue that should not be bound by arbitrary timelines. Kemp has adopted a less strident tone as the conversation about reproductive care has become so pivotal in the closing months of the campaign.
I understand people may disagree on when an abortion should be legal or when it shouldn't be.
And that was Eva McKend reporting. Learn more about California's Proposition 1 and everything else about the election with the KPBS Voter Hub. And new this year, we have a Spanish language version. Get there by clicking the Voter Hub link on our homepage, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Kulture:How family of companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOW or visit billhow.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.